I'm your head coach and instructor, Lindsay, for those of you that don't know me. Today, we're going to be talking all about building a personal brand image. And when we think of brands, we think of most often businesses. We think of logos, we might think of color schemes and packaging. But brands in reality, right, they extend beyond businesses. They can be for influencers. They can be for people like you and I. And so they have relevance to all of us. They also can have a profound impact, right? A personal brand can be really, really powerful. What does a great brand do? Feel free to think about businesses, think about influencers, think about personal brands. I want to hear in general what great brands do for you. And as you're thinking of some of the answers, I'm going to share some of mine. So for me, a really amazing brand, it tells a story. It conveys the values of that person or of that business. It aligns a brand more powerfully with the people that they want to align and connect to. It develops trust. It really, for me, is this culmination of who you are and what you stand for all together in one. What does your personal brand do? Right? What does your personal brand do? So your personal brand is really the story that is told when your name is said in a room, or the thoughts or emotions that are invoked when somebody sees your picture online, or the impression that you're going to leave after an interview. How many of you have taken the time to actively curate your own personal brand? I'm super curious about that. Tell me in the chat, has anybody gone through the practice of curating your own personal brand? Not fully, yeah. What is a personal brand? What does it consist of? What are some of the components that go into it? For me, it's things like online presence, right? How we're seen at work, the way that we dress, the way that we speak, the trust that you build, the way that you just make people feel. So it's a whole bunch of different things. It's not just the technical, the presence you have when you walk into a room, how you work a room. I love that one. How you're remembered, yeah. And how you're remembered really comes down to, in so many instances, the way that you make people feel, right? I had a client of mine actually call me recently, and it was out of the blue. We worked together, gosh, like 10 years ago. And it was a couple of months back, and he picked up the phone and he was like, Lindsay, I just wanted to let you know that I was thinking about you the other day. And I will never forget the way that you made me feel. And that was one of those like jaw-dropping moments for me where I was like, man, I'm hoping that I put that out into the world. And I hope that that's what part of my personal brand stands for. But sometimes you don't get that mirroring back. You don't necessarily know. So we have to start in terms of thinking about our personal brand by asking this really important question. And you'll notice that if you come to any of my sessions, this is kind of a theme that's woven throughout. This idea of like, why is it important to me? Why is it important for me to refine my personal brand or build a personal brand in the first place? Why does it matter? Why is it that you find this to be a process that you might want to go through? Or what's been piquing your interest in going in the direction of creating a personal brand or sitting down and truly refine it? So let's dive in here. Let's take a look at what we're really going to focus on for today. So we're going to talk a little bit about some concepts. I'm going to share a whole bunch of really wonderful questions that you can be asking yourself. We're going to talk about personal reflection and online presence. We're also going to dive into a little bit of external opinion. And for those of you that don't know me well yet, I'm obviously going to share a lot about who I am on these calls because I think it's important to show part of the fact that I'm human and I go through very similar thoughts and feelings and take actions and all of this stuff. So one of the things about me in terms of external opinion is that I find that internal opinion is the most important thing, right? What you believe about yourself, that's the most important. There are going to be people out there that have thoughts about you. Those are their thoughts. Those are not your responsibility, okay? There's also showing up as your most authentic self. And I think that, yes, it's important for us to understand how people are perceiving us. And we're going to talk a lot about that, right? Because in a lot of instances, perception is reality, whether we like it or not. So we'll talk about the elements of external opinion that could be helpful. But I put more weight on internal knowing and the agency that we create for ourselves. That's what's the most important thing. So we're going to spend the most amount of time there, and then we'll appropriately spend some time in external opinion as well. We're also going to talk about how to take action. So what is the point if we aren't in here for the ability to take some action? So we're going to do that. And let's go ahead and dive in. Personal reflection, in my opinion, as I said, is the most important element here in developing your own personal brand. Before we go into looking at those external sources, as I mentioned, we've got to check in with ourselves and really understand and develop this clear picture of who we are, who we want to become, what we want to represent. That then gives us the ability to start looking at the outside sources. If not, we start to take on too much of those external opinions. And a lot of external opinions aren't necessarily even opinions. A lot of the time, the external opinions that we look at are just our interpretations of the things that other people are doing, okay? So we might not even get direct feedback. And we are using that information as if it is true and an external opinion. So half the time, the information that we're looking at is just junk anyway. It's just the stuff that's going on inside of our brain. So we want to be really clear there, okay? So the first question that I love to ask and dive into is really, what are my own personal values? This is probably the most important question that you can ask yourself. Your values, as I'm sure we all know, are the things that determine how you show up in the world. It really determines pretty much everything in your world. Now, values don't have to be an individual word like you're going to see in that laundry list, right? They can be statements. They could be something like experiences over stuff, or diversity of thought, or physical, emotional, mental, spiritual energy is what drives personal performance, right? It can be any of that. The point is that your values shape who you are and how you show up. So about 5 years ago-ish, I was working for a coaching company. And within the first 6 months, I became absolutely burnt out. And it wasn't because I hadn't gone through this exercise. I had gone through this exercise, but I did that thing where I put it in the drawer, and I didn't look at it on a regular basis. For about 6 months, I lost sight of what my values were and what was important to me. And as a result, I ended up kind of showing up and letting the values of my employer drive my actions. And I finally realized the reason that I was feeling so horrible was because of that misalignment. So I had become blinded essentially by this great opportunity, and I let what was important to me go out the window. And I took on the persona and kind of the value set in the moment, not deep down, because if I had, then I would have felt fine. But it was this resistance where my actions were in line with this other person's values, and my values were over here, and the two of them were colliding with one another. And so it was very uncomfortable. And so there are a few things to note with that story. One, if I had kept my personal brand document front and center for me, more on a regular basis where I could review it, I might have asked better questions when I was going through the interview process. I would have known the things that were going to be, that I could have pulled up in the moment that would have been red flags, and I could have paid attention to those red flags. but I didn't. So number two is, if I hadn't crafted that document in the first place, I may have stayed with the firm for longer than 6 months. So that's one of the things that I look back on and I'm like, you know what, I'm really proud of myself for the fact that it didn't take me very long in the grander scheme of things. We can look at lots of individuals that stay in corporations for years or decades beyond where it is that they want to be there and that they should have stayed there. And, you know, they are just feeling horrible the entire time. So I'm really proud in the fact that it took me 6 months. It actually took me a heck of a lot sooner to feel the resistance. So I would say for 3 months, it was really, really, really resistant. And then finally I woke up one day and I was like, oh, it's because our values are misaligned. Okay. So I want you to think about that. What makes me unique? Okay. How do I stand out? This is what's going to set you apart from the rest of that sea of sameness that's out there. Okay, so what lens do you want other people to view you through? What's a story about you that's interesting? What experiences have you had that are different from the norm? If you don't know what actually makes you unique, ask yourself the question, how do I want to stand out? That's another thing that you can do. You don't have to, you know, just look to where you are right now. Think about, what can I create? If I haven't created it yet, that's okay. That's okay. What's your hurry? What's your rush? You'll eventually get there. The worst thing that you could do is feel bad about it and then not take action of creating this unique being that you want to be. With this next question, I really want you to tack this statement onto the end of the question. So I want you to say, what do I want to improve about myself that will impact my personal brand? Okay, we all have stuff that we want to work on, but what do we want to work on that will specifically support you in the development of the brand that you want? Okay, so for me, I want to become a more consistent writer. I want to post more frequently with thought content on LinkedIn and on Instagram. That's something that I want, that I believe is really going to impact my personal brand in the way that I want it to impact my personal brand. So for others, it might be, you know, developing confidence around public speaking. So next question here. How do I want to be seen by others? This for me is kind of like, what do I want to be known for? Who do I want to be seen as? So like for me, I want to be seen as human. That's one of the things that really matters to me. And that means specifically as it relates to my brand that I'm not going to try to overly curate the perfect image of myself. I want you to see the nasty stuff too. So I talk more about my emotions. Again, that's part of my brand. I'll tell you when I've, you know, gone off the rails. Last night is a perfect example. My computer just completely shut down and I had to do a hard reboot and it ended up with donuts. So that's an example. So I put that on social media. I was like, here is that story in 4 pictures and it ended with donuts. So sometimes I can't even regulate my emotions. Who do I admire? This is now starting to get into that external realm. So once you've looked inward, you can start to look outward and look to like, what brands or influencers do I align with? What do I admire about them? How do they make me feel? What do they do, or how do they show up that I respect? What are the elements of what I see that I can pull into my own personal brand? So I do love this exercise because it is going to help you to potentially make a shift from past persona into future persona. It's also going to give you an idea of how you're going to be impacting others. Okay. So when you start to show up in this way, if you start to kind of mirror this individual, you'll already have some evidence about how that is received by other people. Okay. Got a question in here. So how much time do you recommend spending on exercises like this? Great question. So I look at my answers to these questions monthly, sometimes more. In terms of updating it once a year, then I do that along with my goal planning process. Going through it for the first time, I'd suggest that you block out a couple of hours. So, from beginning to end, I might block out 20 to 30-minute chunks over the course of a couple of weeks, and then do it on an annual basis so that you can check in and see what's changed. I might sometimes update it randomly if there's something that pops up. So yeah, great question. What personal style? Everybody should have a personal style. Everybody, has heard the old adage that you want to dress for the job. Don't dress for the job that you have, dress for the job that you want, right? That doesn't mean that you have to spend the most money, but I think that, what your style says about you is important. It leaves an impression. And I think that how you feel about yourself when you dress a certain way is different. You can show up more confidence. So I want you to think about that. What are you wearing when you are the most confident? It's also important to be authentically you. I like to call myself a designer hippie. That's kind of my jam. It's part of my unique brand. I think that you can see it show in things like my website, my photos, the language I use, the wardrobe style, my glasses, my home. I'm very, I like a lot of mid-century modern. So that shows up in my corporate style as well. So when I'm thinking about the environment that I'm in, I was in finance, right? Very, very like black or blue suit, and that's about it. So I found ways to incorporate my own personal style in the glasses, in my shoes, in my accessories, in the pops of color. I would sometimes do really funky, like really professional, but really funky suit pants. The beautiful, there's a lot of unique stuff that's out there. You have to look for it. But if you really decide this is going to be my style and this is going to be my brand, and how do I show up and what does that convey about me, you can develop something that makes a lot of sense. And then finding things like capsule wardrobes will really allow you to find a place that works well. I joke with my partner, he's the ultimate capsule wardrobe human. He goes to one place for his work shirts. He gets his t-shirts from one place. They are one brand, they're Viore. He gets all of his shorts in one location. Like everything is very capsule, and I'm super jealous. It's so much easier for him to, that's not true. He's taken a long time to find it. I guess that's more importantly the point. Gone through the process to decide like intentionally, what does he want to look like? And then works on that process. All of this boils down into who is my authentic self, okay? So who are you and when are you authentically you? When you show up as your authentic you shine the brightest. You attract those people that you're meant to work with, and it feels like less work, right? So how do we show up as us? The only way we can do that is if we get clear on all of those questions that I asked. All right, basically online presence really boils down to reputation risk. If you aren't curating your online personal brand, it's going to hurt you in some way, shape, or form. Either your competition will stand out over you, or there'll be something that a recruiter thinks is too risky for the business to take on. And for all of those reasons, it's important for us to be paying attention to it. So whether or not you're searching for a job, or you're thinking about this in terms of client relationships or networking or future career moves, or just general reputation, this is something that we need to be paying attention to, okay? So the list is pretty simple here. It starts with what comes up for you when you do a search for yourself online. Everybody should have a Google alert set up on their name or anything that could be related to you. And then you also can go through the process if you want to pay firms to remove things from the internet for you. Google's recently added a form that will allow you to request that they remove certain things. You also can just drive more content around your name so that the searches, it doesn't show up as high on the list. It's really based on clicks, right? So that's more content being driven to it. So that's what elevates the search level. So other question would be, what does my social media presence say about me? And then what do I want it to say about me? Think about your photos, the comments that are out there, the posts that you have, whether or not you want to be a good thought leader, or are you a giver or a taker? Are you always asking for stuff, or are you going back and engaging with other people? When you post something, you also engage with other people's posts. You know, what are your passions? Does it show that you're a partier? Is it showing that you're responsible? Like, what does your online presence say? And then finally is that external opinions. And we all know that, again, external opinions aren't necessarily the most important in my book, but some of the key things that you want to think about are, you know, who are my key stakeholders? Think about internal to your company, in your industry, centers of influence that you want to be working with, your promoters, your champion, your mentors, okay? So how can you promote yourself with these people and then draw them into your inner circle so that you can then turn around and ask them for advice and feedback, okay? And people love to give advice. It makes them feel super special. It makes them, you know, have a sense of responsibility for the outcomes that you're looking to create. It's really a wonderful way to engage with folks. And then what do people ask my advice on? So this will help to, again, drive some of that unique ability, what makes you stand out, what themes are coming up in my reviews. I want you to think about, you know, what feedback have I asked for? What feedback have I received? What could I go in and ask for more of? What do my clients and my colleagues praise me for? So I told you earlier that call that I got from my client Demetrius, him telling me, you know, I always remember how you made me feel. Again, that reinforced for me that my personal brand was showing up. But what are some of the things that you're hearing? And do they align with what you want to create? All right, so let's talk about action. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk away from the session. I want you to think about designing your own strategy. Think about what am I trying to achieve? Where do I want to spend time? Do I want to be on LinkedIn? Do I want to be on Instagram? Who am I trying to build this brand for? You know, obviously it's for you, but it's also for an audience so that they can get to know you. So where do the people that you want to get to know you spend time? You don't have to be everywhere. You know, you want to make sure that each of your profiles is authentically you wherever you are. So I haven't been on Twitter in years, and I'm just starting to get back on Twitter. And it's so funny. You look at the picture of me on Twitter and it's me with really long hair. It's me doing a speaking event. You know, it's me. Is it authentically me? I don't know. I think that I need to go back and take a look at that. So come up with your strategy, do an overhaul, decide who you want to start engaging with and how often you want to engage with them and the ways that you want to engage with them. I mean, the social piece of social media means that we've got to engage. And so what does that strategy look like for you? Offline, think about, you know, building a personal board. Who are some of the influencers in your industry? Who are the colleagues that you want to engage with? Who are the peers that you admire, your family, your friends? Do a 360 review. Not always the most comfortable, but it's super important for us to see. This is something that I did a couple of years ago. It was a fascinating process that I went through where I gave my family, my friends, my colleagues a really long survey before I went into the Human Performance Institute. And man, it was interesting to see how I rated myself and how they saw me. And in some instances, there were things that I was blind to that I was like, yeah, we probably should take a look at that. And then there were other things where I was like, man, they see me in a really beautiful light. And I don't necessarily see myself in that way or in the same way. And so it just gave me an opportunity to open up and do a little bit of exploring, which was pretty cool. So the questions that you can ask in those meetings, like, what comes to mind when you think about me? Like, give me 5 words that come to mind when you think about me. What do you know me for? Or like, what am I known for, right? Would you recommend somebody talk to me or get advice from me? And if so, what would it be about? Would you ask me to either participate in a speaking event or ask me to contribute content? If so, what would it be about? And then finally, what advice would you give for me to hone my personal brand? Those are some really wonderful questions for you to be able to ask. The last two of these I think are really fun. So one of them is something that I got from one of the Instagram posts that I just recently watched that my partner sent to me, where it was all about recording yourself. And so 5 to 10 minutes. Think about, so 5 to 10 minutes of a video record on any topic that you're passionate about. And I want you to watch it. Okay, so the first time I want you to do sound off and just watch your mannerisms. Okay, and then second time I want you to turn sound off, sound on. Don't watch the video, like put the video down, just listen to it. Listen to the ums and the pauses and your cadence and your modulation. And when you are smiling, when you're moving, you actually have more of that presence, which is part of why I do a lot of gesturing on these calls. I don't want to just sit here and be static. I want you to be a part of this experience. And when I'm a part of bringing you in and having you be a part of this experience, then it changes the way that I sound. So watch the video and then watch it with sound and put it all together and see what you see. And is that part of the brand that you want to create? And then finally, the personal image, think about your style, think about your personality, your presence, you know, how you make people feel. All of that goes into personal image. Okay. So those are some of the things that you can think about. And again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you being here, taking the time for you and to go through this process. I look forward to seeing you next month.